So a little over a month ago, Dom was here with his Prevost, if you remember. He had an oil leak on it, and there were some other issues. He had a broken exhaust manifold. We replaced manifold gaskets and did some other stuff. But we tracked down this big oil leak that was coming from his valve cover gasket that wasn't, or the valve cover wasn't put on properly, and the gasket was damaged. He was here during the solar eclipse, if you remember that. But anyways, we got that oil leak fixed up on his bus. We sent him on a 50-mile test drive. There was no leak on the back of his bus or anything. So he went home, had tons of power. He loved how the bus drove. He was in Georgia and everything was fine. He got to the Florida line. He went behind the bus and there's oil specks all over the back of the bus. So the oil leak was back, whatever it was. So he's coming back in. We're going to go through and look and see if we can track down what this oil leak's coming from. Well, one thing we noticed here is look at this idler pulley on this fan belt here for the radiator. That it's just wobbling all over the place, making a racket. It needs to be looked at. That thing should be rock steady, and it's real wobbly. So we'll figure out what's going on with that while we run the engine here. We're trying to kick it up at high RPM and see if we can find the oil leak. Well, we've been running down the pit for 20 minutes at high RPM and no sign of any leak, no drips on the ground. It's just not leaking anywhere. So we're going to dump a bottle of this, the whole bottle, because the engine holds like 7 gallons of oil. So we'll dump this in there. This is a UV dye. We've got a UV light. We'll put this in there. We're going to take it for a test drive and see if we can figure out the source of the oil leak on the Prevost here. Okay, he took it for a 50-mile test drive with the dye in there on the interstate, and the only oil leak that we're seeing here is a tiny little bit of seepage around that back corner of the head there, underneath that valve cover. See where those bolts are back there? Coming around that back side. Now where those bolts are, that's coolant under those bolts. So the oil's not leaking from around that plate, but it is coming from around somewhere on the back side of that head, and it's just kind of seeping up over on that part of the head there, just above the exhaust manifold. Sorry for the camera work here. Everything's super hot right now. But yeah, there's no oil running down anywhere else that I can see, just that tiny little bit of seepage in the back corner. And then over here on the other side of the engine, hopefully you won't get seasick here, but up where this little oil pressure gauge is mounted on the wall here, the bulkhead, there's this oil pressure gauge, and there's some oil coming out of that thing and dripping down, coming out of the gauge here, this manual gauge. It's leaking out from under the glass there, and it's dripping onto this intake housing and running down this hose clamp on here, and then kind of dribbling onto the head. But it's not a bad leak. It's very, very small. But we had this totally clean before it went out of here. So just a little bit of oil leak here and a tiny bit on the other side. So I don't know what's making this huge mess, but we're going to start looking around that back side of the head and see if we can figure it out from there. So this is just a small mechanical gauge here. Threads right in, NPT threads, 1/8 inch NPT, and then it was leaking internally. Somehow oil was getting into the gauge part and coming out of the bottom, so we're just replacing it with the $20 mechanical gauge. All right, so there's a rear access hole to the engine in the rear part of the bus on the interior. He's going to move a few things around in the bedroom and lift the bed up in order for us to get access to this hole so we can get to the back side of the engine to really see what's going on. We can't see from down below. Okay, so we got into the rear engine access here, and then we noticed on that corner of that head that there's an opening. Yep, that goes straight into the, pull it out. That's not bad.
And it looks like this matching bolt, whatever this bolt is going to be the same as that one.
This is all a huge mess. I can't believe Dom operates a bus like this. It's this dirty. He never had this rear engine access open before. He about shit himself when he saw how dirty it was under here. His engine is so clean. He even hired a company to clean his engine. They didn't do the back.
That's how irritating that is. And I see the crescent wrench that Jonathan was talking about. See it right over here in the corner? Up on the frame rail?
Oh yeah, that's been there a while.
Okay.
This is another engine here, but this is where that bolt is missing on his. It goes. This one has a plug in it, but yeah, it goes right there. And it's just missing, so the inside the valve cover here, oil can just come right out the back. Now his engine sits a little bit downhill, so it would have really, when he was going up a hill, then it would have flowed out the back quite a bit, because there's quite a bit of oil pooling up down here before it drains down. There's a head bolt goes there, but that's an oil drain hole there on the bottom. Yeah, so that would have been leaking right out of there like crazy, all down the back of his motor. This was the wrench that they found there this morning in the frame rail. Blue point. We're replacing a few gaskets on the back of the motor here. This one here goes to where sometimes a alternator gets mounted, but this bolt here, man, we're lucky this thing came out. It was so rusted and corroded, so we replaced all these studs, and then we replaced the little plate on the front corner of the head, and we did that, one of the bolts broke, and we had to weld onto it to just barely get it out. We tried using left-handed drill bits. That didn't work, but we were able to weld a nut head on it and actually get it out. But yeah, there was a lot of corroded stuff back there for how oily it was. It was kind of crazy. Little nut there to the broken off bolt, blindly with a mirror.
Oh, look at that. It just barely grabbed that bolt too, that weld.
3 people that couldn't see it. It took 3 people. That's awesome. Okay, we just took the cap off because it was leaking. He just had this leaky seal replaced. They didn't bend the washer over to lock it. Well, if you remember how dirty this was back here, it was absolutely filthy on the engine. We got everything cleaned up real good. Everything is clean now, and new gaskets on it, and the oil hole plugged. He should be leak-free and good to go. He's got it unplugged, yeah. So this is the belt tensioner on here. There's a bronze bushing in here that was completely worn out. We took it to our buddy Jeff, he has a machine shop, and he put a new bronze bushing and machined it for us, so it's a good tight fit. We had to get in, we had the gasket here for this. This had to come off, otherwise the bolt to remove this was hitting this, so that goes to the oil cooler there. So got that all torn apart. Well, that bronze bushing made a big difference. The idler pulley looks perfect. All this dirty water here, this is coming out of it. We're cleaning the radiator fins on here. We noticed that because that oil leaks, the fan's been slinging oil everywhere in there. The radiator was just filthy. So we're able to clean this all down real good, get a lot of gook and grime off the radiator. So it should cool the engine a lot better now, having this all cleaned. It's amazing how much this gets overlooked. Just take a few minutes to clean the radiators. It's going to help you not overheat your engine. All right, he took it on a long test drive, no oil leaks, no drips whatsoever. And just as we got him leaving, we got another bus coming in just right after him. They look similar. One's an MCI, one's a Prevost, but similar paint schemes and everything. But big, beautiful bus. This is our buddy George coming back. He's been here before just for some light maintenance and stuff. But it's nice to see, one go and another one show up at the same time.